That was my dad. Failure is a part of trying. That taught me two things. And failure, and if you do fail, you simply shake yourself off, get up, and start again. So, off to medical school. One of the happiest days of my life was when I was accepted into medical school, and it was a game changer, a life changer. But medical school for me was a challenge and somewhat difficult. I was doing two things. I was a medical student, and I was playing intercollegiate basketball. Our basketball team was traveling all over the country. We were on airplanes, we were flying everywhere. It was hard. So then I learned I had wonderful classmates and teammates that let me do things that I otherwise could not have done. They gave me time, they actually tutored me, they encouraged me. It really taught me that depending on classmates and teammates made my life so much better. So, and then another thing I did during medical school was I bought a house when I was in medical school. I needed a place to stay, and I thought, why don't I take a risk? Why don't I get an impossible mortgage and rent out rooms to classmates to cover the mortgage? It was a success. It taught me how wonderful it could be to invent in other areas. I sold that house, paid off my debts, and used it to invest in other things. So even though medical school was tough, I learned that I could depend on my classmates and teammates, and that medical school allowed me also to ignite and encourage my entrepreneurship. But just to show medical school was not all study, I was in a group as a dancer with a band that played a sort of copy that some of you may remember, called the Shanana Band. In the 1960s, they played a lot of rock and roll. And in that band, it featured gold-suited male dancers, of which I was one. Now, we had a very catchy name that would be very meaningful to doctors and to medical students who know their anatomy. We were called Pudental Block and the Numbnuts. Now, we were not smart to use that name because there was an air of political correctness. And so we were threatened, and we almost got kicked out of school. So it was a very stressful time. So the lesson learned for me was that, if you're going to either be a dumbass or a numbnut, at least have a good time. So, why Eyes and why Philadelphia? Well, I was in medical school, and I was trying to figure out what was I going to do with the rest of my life. And so I gave all the thoughts. I was asked to stay in Canada. I was going to be in surgery, et cetera, et cetera. I was a good student. But then my brother, who's older, came to me and said, give it a lot of thought, because ophthalmology, for him, he said, it's very good. Think about it. I said, I don't really care about eyes that much, et cetera. But he said, give it a thought. And he listed all the reasons, and I think all of us here can probably agree. Da-da-da-da-da-da-da-da-da. Ophthalmology is a fantastic profession. I'm so thankful for it. So then my dad talked to me as well. He said, give this serious thought and define the rest of your life. And even though you may not love ophthalmology, think about it. So for me, really, to be honest, it was more of a plan than it was a passion. So off to Philadelphia, lucky enough to be accepted to Wills Eye Hospital residency program, and it's of course moved from this old building to downtown. And then at that time when you were at Wills, you were allowed to have jobs. You could moonlight. Now I had 3 jobs, 3 things that I did during residency. I was doing insurance physicals. I was working at a train manufacturing plant as an emergency room doctor in the weekends. And then I did eye exams for clinicians who had space in their offices and needed some help on the weekends. So, I know some of you are thinking this looks very much like a 1970s police lineup for a serial killer. But it's actually our ophthalmology residency class and future ophthalmologists. So while in residency, there's one story that some of you may appreciate, and I think you probably can, and some of you may have heard this. So while we're in residency at Wills, like all training, we start off, we get there, and we're there for a few months, and we're taught how to do things at an early phase. One of the things we're taught is how to harvest eyes for coming back to the hospital to do cornea transplants and things like that. So we're given a course on how to enucleate and how to harvest eyes. So we all take the course, Everybody knows how to do it. So about 3 months later, one of our residents who's never done it, he goes out and leaves and goes to the place to a morgue at night to harvest a knife. But before he goes to the chief resident and says, I've taken this course and I've been taught how to do this, but I'm really not very confident about this. Could you give me a refresher? The chief resident says, of course. So they talk and they do all that. The resident leaves, he goes to the morgue, and he gets there, and he's there for a while, but he gets very nervous again. So he calls back to the hospital, says to the chief resident, he says, I still don't feel very good. Tell me again what I should do and how I should do it. Chief resident walks him through it again. So then nothing else happens. About an hour or so later, the resident comes back to the hospital. He finds the chief resident, and he's carrying a big, heavy bag with him. So he goes to the chief resident, and he says, you know, I hate to tell you this, but I just couldn't get it right. So I just decided to come back and bring the whole head. The good news, it was a joke. He brought had a big bag of watermelon with him. So at Wills, we learned a lot. With great people, we all know names: Tom Duane, Peter Labeson, Bill Tasman, George Spade. They taught us great medical skills, but you know what? They taught us things that are very important: empathy, judgment, kindness. So, talk about visionaries and heroes. Here's one of mine. This is the famous pediatric ophthalmologist, Marshall Parks. A remarkable man, hardworking, a genius, a teacher, a pioneer, a leader. He trained over 600 pediatric ophthalmologists, and he taught us pediatric ophthalmology. Now, I've always thought it was important to train with the finest doctors on earth, and I learned to do well in a residency program that it doesn't hurt to marry the boss's daughter. That's Marshall Parks on the left, white hair, of course, and I ended up being allowed to marry his wonderful daughter. The biggest reason I've had such a wonderful and professional career is due to my wonderful wife, Mary. We've been married 41 years, and she's a remarkable person in her own right. She's beautiful, talented, a loving mother, a grandmother, and a family person. But besides all that, she has done remarkable things on her own, such as being a talented artist, a champion of food safety, serving on educational, civic, museum, and international global health boards, just to name a few things. So she's a unique and important influence and an inspiration in my life, who can completely control me by a sideways glance and raising her left eyebrow 1/4 of an inch. My kids tell me that's a superpower to have. So it's time to become a real doctor in the real world. After fellowship in 1970 at the age of 30, no children, married, no ties, where do we go? So I knew from living in Philadelphia that the sun was not always shining, and I love sunshine. I'm very happy and very much more at peace when there's sun. So we decided that we were going to go somewhere with the sun. Well, how did I know Dothan, Alabama was going to be right for us for a lot of reasons? What I did was, it tells me a little bit about myself sometimes. I wrote the United States government, and I said, tell me, if you can, where are the most hours of sunshine in the United States? So they sent me, it's a U.S. Geological Climatic Survey. It shows in there how many hours of sunshine in each part of the country, and it turns out Dothan, Alabama has the second most hours of sunshine in the entire country. So that was just exactly kind of what I wanted. So Dothan was our choice, and I've never regretted it. And just like my dad, Mary and we immigrated. We came to actually a different country. We were from the Northeast in Canada, and so we had to really adjust. We got into learning all kinds of things, food and culture and language, but I must say we were extremely warmly welcomed and started my professional career in Dothan, Alabama, where we've lived ever since. So here's the second part of the Cows, Cataracts, Casts, and Kids. And it's about my ophthalmologic practice. I started doing everything, and I think a lot of us have, a lot of senior everything. I did cataracts, and I even did cornea transplants, I did muscle surgery, did it all. And that was wonderful at the time. And over the years, I've learned that, you know, my happiness relied on several things. First, being allowed to do what I did. I had some passion, still have passion for it, hard work and persistence. And over time, as an example, I got increasingly impatient in the hospital environment.